The air was thick with tension as you looked around the room, unsure of what the future held in store. Your family's safety and well-being were at stake, and you had to find a way to protect them. You knew that your only hope was to prepare for the worst, to arm yourself with the knowledge and skills needed to survive whatever might come. You had to be ready for anything. You had to be ready for the unknown. And, as you read this book, you knew that you had finally found the answers you were looking for. You had found the knowledge and the tools needed to protect your family and your future. It was time to prepare for the unknown. In this video, Why We Want You to Be Rich, from the best-selling book, Why We Want You to Be Rich, 2 Men, 1 Message, by the great authors Robert Kiyosaki and us President Donald Trump. Get ready to expand your mind, learn valuable lessons, and gain a deeper understanding of the principles that drive successful individuals. You'll not only gain knowledge, but also practical guidance to apply in your own life. Unleash your full potential with a Rich Mind channel, where you'll discover valuable insights and knowledge from renowned authors and speakers from around the world. Whether you're looking to improve your professional skills, achieve success, or build wealth, this channel is dedicated to providing you with the tools and resources you need to reach your goals. Join us on our journey to success and subscribe today. Let's learn and grow together. Why We Want You to Be Rich. Robert's view. When Charles Wilson, the president of General Motors at the time, was chosen to serve as Secretary of Defense in 1953, he was questioned about his ability to make choices that would be detrimental to GM. He acknowledged that he could, but said that he couldn't see a circumstance in which that would occur because for years I thought what was good for the country was good for General Motors and vice versa. Although his message was undoubtedly more nuanced, the then GM president is frequently cited as saying, "What is good for General Motors is good for America." He was implying that the two global powers, GM and the US, were connected. Though not in the same way as it was before, that is still true now. General Motors has long been facing difficulties, and the same can be said for the United States. The root cause of GM's troubles lies in the shortcomings of its cars, as well as the company's long-standing managerial issues. Much like the United States, GM has relied heavily on past successes without adequately addressing its problems, leading to a situation where problems are simply pushed aside and not solved. An example of how poorly managed GM comes from the book Buffettology. According to Mary Buffett, the same phenomenon can be seen in the financial records of the General Motors Company, which indicate that between the beginning of 1985 and the end of 1994 it earned in total approximately $17.92 a share and paid out in dividends approximately $20.62 a share. During this same period of time, the company spent approximately $102.34 on capital improvements. The question that should be running through your mind is, if General Motors' earnings during this time period totaled $17.92 and it paid out as dividends $20.62, where did the extra $2.68 that is paid out in dividends and the $102.34 that it spent on capital improvements come from? This brief example fails to account for the fact that GM has been steadily losing market share, that a number of employees are receiving salaries despite not being able to work, and the company's underfunded pension and medical liabilities. Much like the United States, the world's largest automaker is on the brink of bankruptcy. What is good for GM is also good for the country, but at what cost? A cursory glance at GM's financials shows that a basic understanding of mathematics is all that is needed to comprehend them. No MBA required. Ask yourself this: how can a company spend more than it earns and still remain in business? While a child may understand that it is impossible to have $20.62 when you only have $17.92, then he may not understand why a company such as GM can spend $102.34 a share when it only earns $17.92 a share. People may be naive in investing in GM and other blue-chip companies that make such foolish financial decisions. This could be attributed to the lack of financial education. As Warren Buffett said, "It has been helpful to me to have tens of thousands of students turned out of business schools taught that it didn't do any good to think." Without the proper knowledge, it is no wonder that such companies make bad financial decisions. Mr. Buffett has also said, "If calculus were required, I'd have to go back to delivering papers. I've never seen any need for algebra." I take what he's saying to mean that being wealthy is a matter of common sense and easy math. And that begs the obvious question: how can so many intelligent individuals be convinced to invest in a business that employs fuzzy math rather than rational math? It seems apt to cite Mr. Buffett. Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls-Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. Opportunity. Warren Buffett just made headlines once more. He had enjoyed seeing a Rich Wagoner interview on GM. Mr. Buffett sent his daughter to the store to get him a new Cadillac as a sign of support. This led to some inquiries and a lot of conjecture. The bloggers were quite active with some of the following comments. Buying a Cadillac means Warren Buffett changed his mind about GM. It must be time to buy GM stock. With GM stock so low, he's just cashing in on good prices on Cadillacs. Even though GM is in trouble, Warren Buffett believes in buying American. Warren Buffett has been making comments about the fundamentals of GM's financials being very poor. He is very carefully watching the stock price drop so he can swoop in and buy up the company at the right price. Which do you think is accurate? All, some, or none, depending. Regardless of the reason Warren Buffett purchased a Cadillac, it may be best to understand how to do your own study of GM's financial status. The rich are getting richer. Donald Trump and I are both deeply concerned about the future of our country. We can see that something is wrong, just like we can all see that more than just the cars at GM are wrong. We fear that our nation and its wealth have been mismanaged and mishandled, just like GM has. While the wealthy benefit from playing games with the numbers, the poor and middle classes bear the brunt of the costs. A visit to Detroit reveals a city that feels like a funeral home, with towns and businesses dying. When businesses close, real estate prices drop and entire families are impacted in more ways than just financially. So, is what's good for GM also good for America? Is Detroit an example of what our nation's future may look like? Or about the entitlement mentality? Donald and I are in agreement that America has become complacent. This does not mean individuals are not putting in hard work. Rather, what we mean by complacent is that people have come to rely on the government to handle their issues and to repair the future. As a nation, we have put too much faith in politicians and bureaucrats. A lot of problems we face today cannot be fixed by the government, as they are beyond the scope of any governmental power. This is a universal truth. People have developed a sense of entitlement, expecting some kind of government support, even among the wealthy. Numerous large corporations are subsidized by the government, and many farms and ranches rely on government handouts to stay afloat. Even the President of the United States and members of the House and Senate expect to receive retirement money from the government. Therefore, when I speak of an entitlement mentality, I am not only referring to the poor. In fact, more government resources are directed towards the wealthy than towards the impoverished. Recently, U.S. Senator Randall Cunningham, a decorated Vietnam War veteran and former U.S. Navy fighter pilot, combat ace and Top Gun instructor, was convicted of accepting bribes and sentenced to jail. Despite his admission of guilt and his conviction, he will still receive his retirement checks from Congress and the Navy. This shows that even if you are a convicted felon, you are still entitled to your government benefits. Our Social Security and Medicare systems are in dire straits, yet millions of people still rely on these entitlements. When President Bush attempted to reform Social Security by privatizing it, the overwhelmingly negative reaction he encountered showed just how much the U.S. cherishes its government handouts. The perfect storm. The American government is no longer able to address the financial issues we all confront on its own. For instance, the Federal Reserve cannot simply raise or lower interest rates to fix our financial problems, yet the Federal Reserve is revered by millions of people around the world for its wisdom. The entire world pays attention whenever Ben Bernanke and former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan talk. Although the issues have not yet been resolved, they are now becoming global issues that are outside the jurisdiction of our nation and its political authorities. Let's review some of the problems and how they are related. 1. A growing trade deficit. The U.S. trade deficit for 2006 is projected to be a staggering $423 billion. This indicates that our nation will be spending $423 billion more than it produces. On a smaller scale, this would be similar to a family earning $5,000 a month spending $6,000 a month, a scenario that only leads to further financial problems. This deficit has led to additional complications. 2. A growing U.S. national debt. According to the Treasury Department, 42 presidents from George Washington in 1789 to Bill Clinton in 2000 borrowed a combined total of $1.1 trillion from foreign governments and financial institutions. The Bush White House alone took out $1.5 trillion between 2000 and 2005, surpassing the debt amassed by all the preceding administrations. Similar to a family attempting to fix their money woes by taking out a home equity loan, the president and government are effectively taking out a loan on our future in order to resolve the issue. This is a form of pushing the problem forward. Just as the advertisements on television that encourage using a home equity loan to pay off credit card debt. This problem leads to the next problem. 3. A falling dollar. In 1971, President Nixon took action to address the growing trade deficit that the United States was facing. This deficit was caused by the country buying more goods from countries in Europe and Japan than it was selling to them. As a result, the difference between what the US sold and what it purchased was paid in gold, since the US dollar was backed by gold at the time. To address this issue, President Nixon decided to unpeg the US dollar from gold, effectively making it a liability instead of an asset. This allowed the US to continue trading with other countries without having to use gold as payment. Today, the US has an even larger trade deficit, and the IOU the country owes to the rest of the world is massive. Notice, IOU stands for IOU. It is a document that acknowledges the existence of a debt, and is usually an informal agreement. It differs from a promissory note in that an IOU does not have the force of law, and is not a negotiable instrument. An IOU can be used to record any debt, such as a loan, rent payments, etc. Instead of backing our dollar with gold, the United States can just print more money, just as we as individuals use credit cards or write checks without any money in the bank. The difference being that you and I can be arrested and thrown in jail for writing bad checks. In 1971, printing more money in an effort to solve the problem at hand was seen as a viable solution, but it only caused more issues. Over the course of a decade from 1996 to 2006, the US dollar lost half of its value relative to gold, with its price going from $250 per ounce to over $600 per ounce. This devaluation of the American dollar has had a detrimental effect on those living on fixed incomes, as their money will not stretch as far. Unfortunately, the government's attempts to solve this problem by printing even more money has only exacerbated the issue, with predictions that by 2020 a loaf of bread may cost as much as $12. In 1996, if you had put $1,000 in the bank, by 2006 that amount would be worth less than $500 in gold. However, if you had purchased 4 ounces of gold for $1,000 instead, by 2021 that gold would be worth $2,400. This shift in policies meant that those who trusted their money was safe in the bank were let down, as they realized their money was not really theirs, but rather an IOU from the government. For those living on a fixed income, their money will not stretch as far as life becomes more expensive. While the government may attribute this to inflation, the real culprit is devaluation. This is caused by the government printing more money to cover their own needs, resulting in the worth of the dollar decreasing. By the year 2020, a loaf of bread may cost $12 while pension checks remain the same. This brings with it another issue. 4. Baby boomers without money. In the near future, the first of 75 million baby boomers will begin to retire, but many don't have enough money to do so comfortably. This shortage of savings is partly linked to Gresham's law, which states that when bad money enters a system, good money goes into hiding. Throughout history, as far back as the Roman Empire, this pattern has been repeated. In 1964, the United States replaced real silver coins with fake coins. As a result, real silver coins were quickly hidden away. It is possible that people may not be saving due to the fact that, either consciously or subconsciously, they understand that the money they receive is not of real value, so they spend it as quickly as they can. We are now a nation of debtors because many people realize that the value of their money is diminishing, and so saving is not an attractive option. The majority of middle-class Americans have more money tied up in their home equity and retirement accounts than in actual dollars in their bank accounts. Americans have one of the lowest savings rates in the world, living longer but with less money and fewer opportunities. This problem leads to the next problem. 5. An entitlement mentality. Since millions of people lack financial resources, they now expect the government to solve their financial problems or to take care of them. If the government does not take care of them, who will? With prices going up, who can afford to take care of them? The issue can no longer be ignored. Social Security is in debt by $10 trillion, and Medicare is in debt by a staggering $62 trillion. It appears that the only solution is to continue down the same path of overspending, taking on more debt than can be paid off, and creating more money out of thin air. This is a vicious cycle which is caused by a lack of knowledge about financial matters and can only be broken by improving financial literacy. 6. Higher oil prices. Higher oil costs are not a result of a lack of financial literacy. Rather, they are a result of selfish self-interest and poor financial judgment. Oil might be replaced with alternative energy sources and technologies, but we haven't yet. We shall suffer financially as a country and a planet as a result of this selfishness and blindness. High oil prices can have a cascading impact on existing issues. The United States was able to borrow extensively to meet its needs due to the growth of its economy. Other countries and lenders were willing to lend to us as long as the economy was strong. However, when energy prices rise, the economy contracts instead of expanding. In such a scenario, the lenders may be less likely to accept more of our debt, making it difficult to solve our economic problems through more promises and more debt. This could lead to a collapse of the existing system. 7. Tax breaks for the rich. Most of us are familiar with the concept of the golden rule, that we should treat others as we would like to be treated. However, this is not the only golden rule that exists. Another interpretation is that the person who has the gold makes the rules. Unfortunately, this has become all too true in America, where the wealthy have taken control of government and are using it to further their own interests. This has resulted in the poor and middle class losing their representation, and the rich growing even richer. On May 11, 2006, ABC News ran the story about the latest tax cuts. Quoting from the story, the Tax Policy Center, a Washington think tank, discovered that the top 0.1% of taxpayers, the people who make more than $1.8 million, would get back $82,000. Middle-income Americans making between $27,000 and $47,000 would get $20. Voodoo economics, or the trickle-down effect. One monetary theory proposes that tax laws should be structured in a way that benefits the wealthy, as the idea is that, if the rich had access to more money, they would invest it, resulting in the creation of more jobs and an increase in the wealth of the poor and middle class. This theory is sometimes referred to as voodoo economics or the trickle-down effect. While this theory may sound good in theory, the reality is that most of the money remains in the hands of the wealthy, with only a small portion trickling down to the lower classes. As a result, the gap between the rich and poor continues to widen. In many cases, asset prices rise due to the wealthy having access to more money. This is because the wealthy tend to use their money to purchase assets, which is one of the reasons why they are wealthy in the first place. When asset prices increase, it makes these assets, items of real and lasting value, more expensive, which puts them out of reach of the poorer and middle classes. Just look at the cost of real estate today. Ask anyone who hasn't already bought a house if they think it is easy to afford the house of their dreams. It's difficult to purchase a house with money that is simply trickling down. In summary, Donald Trump and I came together because we feel this country is on the wrong course and time is running out. Instead of getting better, things are going from bad to worse simply because we are not solving our financial problems. We are only pushing them forward for the next generation to handle. Instead of being optimistic about the political process, my experience of watching my father's failed run for lieutenant governor of the state of Hawaii has left me more cynical. I have come to the realization that it is best to focus my energy on changing myself and my own circumstances, rather than trying to change the laws and systems that are in place. Instead of trying to make the tax laws fairer, I have chosen to become financially astute and use the existing laws to my advantage. If you are looking to join the wealthy rather than fight them, then this book may be for you. However, if you are still looking to make a change in the government, then this book may not be the best fit. Donald and I believe that the best way to change the rules is to first get the gold. If you have the gold, then you have more power. When you have the power, you are better able to enforce the real golden rule, the rule that states, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Donald's view. Before taking action, it is important to first gain an understanding of the rules, laws, and constraints that are in place. Learning can be an investment, and it is important to understand the context in which you are working. For example, if you want to build a building, you must understand the zoning rules and regulations in the area. Similarly, if you want to build a ship, you must understand shipbuilding and the mechanics of sailing out of the harbor. Education is essential to help us think and make informed decisions, and it is concerning when people do not take the time to learn and understand the context in which they are working. Robert and I have a shared understanding that it's important to take care of our island. After the 9/11 attack, New Yorkers formed a strong bond like never before. Our city became our island, linking everyone who lived there as well as those who had never visited. The attack did not bring us down, but rather made us stronger. The phrase "no man is an island" implies that we are all connected and in this together, and this was certainly true after 9/11. We should strive to maintain this spirit, even as we face the economic challenges of today and tomorrow. Together, we can make our island better and stronger. We're a good team, Robert and I. I finally found someone who thinks as big as I do. And don't fall for Robert's Donald Trump builds skyscrapers, and I have a duplex or some nonsense like that. He's highly accomplished, very successful, and he is most definitely a global thinker. What motivates you? But let's focus on something more important, namely, what is the most important thing to you? Is it your family, their well-being, their future and yours? Then you're reading the right book. Robert and I both have things that are very important to us. We've been willing to go to great lengths for them. Therefore, we believe we have something in common with all of you. Suppose your family and your well-being is threatened. What do? You prepare yourself, you equip yourself for what might happen. I don't want to be a financial fearmonger, but I have to tell you that things aren't looking so great. Our financial security is shaky. Just because you can shop at Saks today or online tonight doesn't mean that everything is just fine and that there's nothing to worry about. Don't fall for that comfort zone happy state. Don't be short-sighted. Robert has spotlighted some very real problems that face us all today. 1. A growing trade deficit. 2. A growing national debt. 3. A falling dollar. 4. Baby boomers without money. 5. Entitlement mentality. 6. Higher oil prices. 7. Tax breaks for the rich. It has never been more crucial to educate yourself and your family on financial matters in order to safeguard yourself from potential financial ruin. Education gives you the insight to recognize economic issues and turn them into chances for success. Nonetheless, it is essential to be mindful of the kind of education you are receiving. I recall someone stating, "Before I was exposed to advertising, I could see the world for what it was." This person experienced greater clarity before letting advertising, the media, and politicians influence them. He confessed to his vision becoming blurred after the worldly experts stepped in to clarify things for him. The media is a double-edged sword, capable of both good and bad. The key takeaway is that you must be able to think independently. Robert and I are not here to do the thinking for you, but because we've both done a lot of thinking and have been successful, we believe that what we have to say might be able to lift some of the fog from the horizon, and maybe even tune down the media blasts we are all subjected to. What are your natural instincts? Growing up in Hawaii, Robert is no doubt an expert swimmer, a skill that no doubt helped him become a successful surfer. When I first met him, I never would have imagined I would end up co-authoring a book with a surfer from Hawaii. I recall a statement from his book, Rich Dad's Prophecy, "You cannot learn to swim from a textbook." This was followed by, "You cannot learn business from a textbook or from business school." In other words, nothing beats real-world experience. This brings me to something else I was considering, which has to do with instincts. Robert spent a year at sea, traveling around the world as part of his training at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. This experience undoubtedly helped him hone his instincts, enabling him to be successful in business and life. He said it instilled in him a heightened awareness of signs of shifting weather patterns. Over time, you gain an instinct for when patterns may shift. He has applied this instinct to economic forecasts, describing the economic climate as resembling the elements of the perfect storm we all know of. This is certainly not a comforting thought or image. My understanding of instinct began with baseball. For a baseball player to succeed, they must possess a sixth sense, otherwise, they won't make it past Little League. Many don't know this, but I was a talented baseball player, good enough to be offered college scholarships based purely on my ability. I just understood how the game worked, and I had the physical skills to match. I have since applied this same knowledge to business. I will often see a situation, wait for the pieces to come together and think, okay, bases loaded. Perfect. This means a grand slam to me, a great feeling. On the other hand, Robert might be thinking, the perfect wave. Let's go. I'm not sure how ex-surfers think. Someone once told me that there is no such thing as an ex-surfer. Surfers remain surfers forever. If it hadn't been for his military training and his time at sea, I don't know if I would have been working with him. However, he has vision and tenacity, two very important qualities. The importance of history. I'd like to emphasize the importance of studying history. Knowledge is power. One can learn from history, from the civilizations and empires that have made up the history of the world thus far. Some very big things have disappeared in the course of history. Do you remember the Ottoman Empire? Do you know how long it ruled? Do you know how and why it disappeared as an empire? Maybe you should find out. It could be pertinent to world events and your understanding of them. In other words, the things you don't know about just might possibly affect you someday in some way. When they do, who will you have to blame if you are surprised? Robert and I are both history buffs, and one reason we connect is that we both use history as a guidebook. It's better to learn from history than to repeat the same blunders. As the old saying goes, those who haven't learned from history are destined to repeat it. If today were suddenly to become a memory, what would you like to remember about it? Two quotes come to mind, one from Ralph Waldo Emerson and one from Albert Einstein. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Emerson, the mind that opens to a new idea never comes back to its original size. Einstein, Emerson's quote inspires me to never become complacent and to always strive to learn more and achieve more. Einstein's quote motivates me to think big and be ambitious. While I could elaborate more on my thoughts, I believe that keeping things simple is often the best way to convey an idea. To achieve this, it can take a great deal of effort and thought to distill an idea down to its core. To help with this process, I often look to the writings of great thinkers and writers, as they have often already done this for me. However, I also believe that it is important to take some time to reflect on one's own roots and why one is doing something. Doing so can be a great way to start thinking for oneself and to come up with unique answers. Robert and I have told you why we want you to be rich, but what we want is not important. What is important is what you want for yourself and your family. Do you want to be rich? This is serious business, but it doesn't mean we can't have some fun along the way. Donald Trump. The next video, 3 kinds of investors.